the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if that's something you want to listen to on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple and Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe. If you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And that means we are live on YouTube. So go over to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. If you do get the notifications, you will be notified when we go live on Monday nights. And then you can be a part of the show by coming in, commenting, hanging out. We love going back and forth with everybody. It's always a great time. Why not you? Come be a part of the show. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes. All right. So, Zach, Friday of this past week, I just because of stuff I had to do, I couldn't go to Tennessee's first game at the SEC tournament, but I was still going to go to the SEC tournament. I ended up leaving at 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Tennessee's game was at 1. So I left as Tennessee's game ended against Mississippi State. And I don't know that I've felt that stupid going to a sporting event in quite a while. Thank you to Tennessee's basketball team for that. I was telling you before we got on here, I was sitting there watching the second half while I packed my clothes, thinking we're really gonna do this. This is what we're gonna do. And I got in my car like a clown, and I went to Nashville. But as I got to see Kentucky lose. That was a lot of fun. But what is up, Zach?
Yeah, we were talking about this a minute before the show started. I have to ask you two things. One, at what point did you start getting nervous? Because, lots of times the team comes out hot. Okay, so it didn't take long. You were already like, oh, this is not good. And did you consider making a U-turn and just pulling back in your driveway saying, screw it, screw my buddies, I'm not going?
100%. I mean, it cost me money. I had to pay to go there and spend the gas. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. No, it has been obviously this is going to be the first segment of the show is talking about Tennessee basketball, the bid that they got in the NCAA tournament, and we're going to discuss all of that. But there has been a theme this season that when they come out flat, it's been a really bad omen. You can just kind of tell immediately. And specifically, I look at like Jonas Adu. Like Connect has started out games bad, and then in the second half he wakes up, total monster, takes over. But Adu, when he comes out and he's just missing layups, can't hold on to the ball, he's turning it over. Or Zakai's having a bad game, turning it over, and it's just bad. Nope. Just start it over. Start the game over. This isn't going right, and ultimately, I think most of the games that Tennessee has lost have started out that way. And that one did. And it was absolutely horrific. Got their butt kicked up and down the court. But I did. So, I mean, that night, I went to the Kentucky game, dreading it. Just absolutely just being like, got to go watch Kentucky wipe the floor with Texas A&M.
Were you wearing Tennessee gear or did you?
I was.
Okay.
It was a little subtle. I should have worn more, ultimately. It was just... do you remember in the Indiana bowl game with Pruitt, there was a whole set of people that were holding up signs that were supposed to say good old Rocky Top, and they were all jumbled up, and it was wrong. I have a T-shirt with that on it, and I was wearing that. It's a little subtle. It didn't just say, like, Tennessee basketball. But what was completely unsubtle was me and the entire set of dudes that I was with, all surrounded on all sides by Kentucky fans. And as they suffered, all of us just being like, yeah, let's go, just cheering the entire time. It was hilarious. It was Kentucky losing.
I'll say that, a lot of people go like, oh, you got to go to Neyland Stadium. You got to see a packed out Thompson Bowling Arena. A true experience it's a great just sports experience that everybody should have, unless you're a Kentucky fan. But a great sports experience is going to an away-ish game where Kentucky plays and watching them lose. I've done it when they've played Tennessee at the SEC tournament multiple times now. And it's even against Texas A&M when it's not Tennessee on the other end, it's still just a joy. They're the most just apoplectic. There was this, I don't want to sound like this is mean, but there was a 10-ish year old kid behind us who's Kentucky fan just weeping. And it, you look at it at first glance, you're like, oh, that kid's laughing, and you laugh about it, and you're like, I've been there. I've been there. I get it. Hey, we've all been there. It hurts. No, but that was funny. And then I got to watch Alabama lose too. So, hey, that's great.
Not completely fruitless.
No, that was fine. And then I came home because who cares after that? But with that said, let's get right to it with what happened with Tennessee, specifically after the SEC basketball tournament and that absolute garbage. Let's talk about the bid that they got in the NCAA tournament right after I tell you about Zen Sports. We've been talking about them all season long. The new sports betting app exclusively in Tennessee. And when you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you'll receive up to a $1,000 no danger first wager. That's right. When you place your first bet in Zen Sports, you can be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to a $1,000 maximum if that bet loses. But there's even more good news. Zen Sports is rolling out their brand new VIP rewards program. With the VIP rewards, you'll get top-tier customers will get more bonuses, comps, and perks. And the VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for VIP considerations, check out the program at zensports.com/VIP. No other sportsbook will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and fast withdrawals like Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. I do like that little disclaimer at the end. I try to read it as fast as I can every single week. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. I'll get it down where it literally sounds fake at some point.
It reminds me of the I don't know if you watch Breaking Bad. Saul Goodman, the lawyer, when he'd run his little commercials, the disclaimer would run so fast at the bottom that you had no chance to read what it said at all.
Yes. But that is, of course, that's the stuff that we have to say at the end there. It's 21 or older in Tennessee bet. Don't forget that. All right, let's get right to it. Tennessee just lays the fattest egg against Mississippi State. It was completely ridiculous. That's 2 games in a row now. The Tennessee's done that terrible game against Kentucky. Well, actually, not all that terrible. Dalton Knecht scored 40 and some things like that. And Kentucky played absolutely out of their mind, above their depth to beat you. But then this game against Mississippi State was just nightmare fuel from beginning to end. Nothing to even say. And it leads us to the question, to what I've titled this, and some folks in the comments are already talking about. Is this an omen? In one way or another is really what I want to talk about. Is it an omen that Tennessee's in for an early exit? They're donezo. Or is it, hey, we got the bad game out of the way, and now you're rested up. The legs are fresh. Let's go and let's get a Final Four. Let's just start there, Zach. How are you feeling at first glance?
I'll say as far as the Mississippi State game, real quick, I think you got to give credit to Mississippi State for kind of having a plan. Like they went out there and said, literally, we want to hit them in the mouth early and kind of throw them off their rhythm, and they did. So it was just combination of a bad game and just a really amped up Mississippi State team that came ready to play. I think Tennessee was probably looking forward to Saturday and beyond. But as far as what the loss means, I think, in a vacuum, it's you might panic a little bit because it's 2 tough losses in a row going into the tournament. You're not hot like you were most of February and the first part of March. But then you look at the totality of college basketball right now, and the entire weekend that we just saw was a wild weekend. I mean, Houston losing,
Insane.
Purdue losing, UNC losing. Pretty much everybody that, aside from UConn, dropping games, the championship contenders. I mean, Purdue, Houston, UNC,
Arizona
Tennessee,
lost.
Arizona. Yeah, those are the teams that are the contenders along with UConn. So, I mean, if you want to say, well, this is a terrible omen for Tennessee, I mean, UNC wasn't really in that NC State game. I mean, it was a little bit closer in the Tennessee game, but NC State handled business and dominated them. Houston got blown out. I mean, Purdue should have lost. Purdue should have lost by more. They had some help from some officiating. I think pretty much universally everyone saw that. So Tennessee wasn't alone in kind of laying an egg in their conference tournament. I mean, so you can't really say, I think that, oh, UConn's going to win this all by default. We know how that's not how the tournament works. So I guess a little concerning on some aspects, just because you're capable of playing that bad. You would think that you've lost to Mississippi State already this season. You would take them a little bit more serious in that game. And they outplayed them. They out-hustled them. Turnovers galore. It just sloppy. It was frustrating to watch. Hopefully it's out of their system. I don't think it's a bad omen like, oh, they can't win the championship. I still think they can beat any team in the country.
No.
But the same thing's true of the other 5 teams that we've mentioned, along with UConn. Any of those teams can go all the way and beat any team in the country. So it's March Madness. It's where you kind of want to be. You're still a 2 seed. I think, you could be in a lot worse position going into this tournament.
For sure. There's no doubt. Before we even get into talking about Tennessee's actual draw that they ended up with, the bottom line to me with what happened is just hopefully this wakes them up and you get good play from Adu, rebound the basketball, make layups. Josiah Jordan-James, when you get an open shot, make it. Santiago Vescovi, oh, it's painful. Santiago Vescovi, make a shot. Take a shot.
Take a shot. Yeah, he passes up so many.
Oh.
He's open, and it's just that hesitation. I mean, he's there, and he's like, nope, just throw it. It's not even like he's creating a play off of it either. He's just getting rid of the ball most of the time, it seems like.
Yeah, but if you add in, I think it's simply those 2 elements. Have ancillary players make their open shots. Jonas Adu plays well. And I think you're going to be just fine because Connect is going to get his, because specifically, if those other dudes do those things, it frees up Connect, or vice versa. Connect playing well and drawing a bunch of defense frees them up, and if they make their open shots, great. And that's that. And make your free throws too. Tennessee could have gotten any draw. Like their draw could be Purdue, UConn, Houston, all in a row. And I would say the exact same thing. You can beat all of these teams. You have the ability to beat every single one of those teams, but you have to play this certain way. And that's true of any draw Tennessee was going to get here. Let's go through a few of the comments. So I asked, before we talk about this draw, I asked, is it an early exit for Tennessee or is it a Final Four for Tennessee? Because it seems like kind of both possibilities are there for sure, as they always are for every team. Right off the top, Ethan says, if we exit early, Rick Barnes has to be gone. Whew! Right. Very first comment right off the top rope there. I'll say this. I don't agree with that, although it would be
there's zero chance that happens too.
No.
0% chance.
You will retire. Top Troop keeping it positive. He just says Vols up like Timothy 2. Go Vols. I'm not sure what Playmaker was going to say. He just said yes.
Solid answer, really.
So both.
Yeah.
Christian says both teams losing early in the SEC tournament was crazy. Completely. It was an absolutely insane weekend, which is why I don't just put the utmost amount of stock into it. Of course, Big Ten Jeff says early exit. Craig says early exit because they have Rick Barnes as a coach.
You can't argue against that either. His reputation precedes him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, and Steve says always an early exit. And then Jason mentioned that Joe Lunardi and Dick Vitale both have Tennessee in the Final Four. I mean, I saw multiple other people. He says Jay Williams too.
Is Lunardi even going to watch the tournament? He doesn't. I mean, we discovered this weekend that he doesn't stay up to watch the game. Like his one month of the year that he has to really put in some hours, and he can't.
I couldn't believe it. He tweeted. So Virginia was firmly on the bubble. Like just the most like straddling the line you could possibly get with a team. And on one of the most important nights out of his entire work year, he goes, Virginia might be in trouble. All right, I'm going to bed. And he didn't tweet for the rest of the night. Like, dude, I know you're old, but like,
I feel like us going to bed at halftime of a Tennessee football game against Alabama. I mean, like, you know what? We'll figure it out on Monday. Except he works for ESPN. I mean, that's
it is his literal job. Dwight says, watch MSU and they play tough physical game. Expose Tennessee for not being a physical team. They wilt under pressure like Kentucky and Carolina. I mean, that's not universally true because obviously Tennessee beat Kentucky and Carolina. Both played an extremely tough game at Carolina. That game was so physical and tough. So it's kind of the point that I was saying. We know it's in there. We know that Tennessee can go out, be a physical team, impose their will, and really push teams around. They just actually got to do it. I think distinguished gentleman here was talking about Santiago Vesco. He said his confidence is shot. That's definitely true. It's tough to watch.
Yeah. Ultimately, they really just have to make shots. I mean, they had some good looks against Mississippi State. They could have got back in that game. It wasn't like nothing was working at all. But you've got to make shots, and it feels like I don't know. It feels like Dalton Knecht's pressing a little bit. I mean, even then he's still good, but it does feel like he's instead of just carrying the team, it feels like this pressure is on his shoulders of like, if I don't do it, we're going to lose, and that kind of is the case these last couple of games.
If those other dudes aren't making shots, like at Kentucky, I think Zakai had like 26. Josiah Jordan-James had something similar. Might have also had 26. Adu had a good game there too. Like, of course, that's going to take the pressure off of him. That's fine. But yeah, when those other dudes are putting up shots and everything is a brick, he has to start feeling that and just going, okay, well, I'll go down, just chuck up this shot, even though it's super contested from 30 feet away. And yes, he absolutely does press, and you could tell. And hopefully, like we were saying, hopefully this irons some of that out a little bit for him to say like, hey, let's not press so much.
You get the upside to it, I guess, is you get 6 days off. They play Thursday night, almost 7 really. They play late Thursday nights. So you get some time to kind of step back a little bit, remove yourself from just the grind of it all, and then you can hopefully ease back into it. A 2-15 game or 2 seed versus 15 seed. You should win that pretty easy. I know that's not how it always goes, and obviously nothing's guaranteed, but it should help you kind of find your rhythm again and maybe kickstart what you had found back in February.
I hope so, because if it does all fall into place, obviously we know this team's good enough to make Final Four. That's without a doubt. Now let's talk about this actual draw. Tennessee gets a 2 seed in the Midwest, right? Midwest region, but we'll be playing in Charlotte.
I don't understand any of this. I feel like when I was younger, it was if you're in the West region, you're playing in Spokane or something like that. It's so all over the place now.
I mean, I'm college basketball obsessive, and I have no clue how all that works out. But you're in Charlotte, Midwest region, whatever. And I guess the Sweet 16 Elite 8 will be in Dallas, I want to say. If you end up making it, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where it will be. But you're playing St. Peter's, who, of course, very comically knocked off Kentucky when Kentucky was a 2 seed a few years ago. 2 years ago, I want to say. And a lot of people have been saying, St. Peter's, here we go. If Tennessee loses to St. Peter's, I'll entertain some Fire Rick Barnes talk.
Yeah.
That would be absolute. St. Peter's is not good. St. Peter's,
I think you got to Philip Fulmer him if that happens.
Yeah. You got to say, okay. Not only was this like classic Rick Barnes stuff, this was like beyond bad, because St. Peter's was not even the best not even in, I want to say, even in the top 5 of their conference. And it's not like they play in some good conference. It's not the A10 where some years the A10 can be really good or something like that. Like with Richmond, VCU, like some of those teams that are kind of perennial mid-majors. They don't play in a league like that. And they were like the number 6 team and then lost double-digit losses on the season. And then just came up and won their conference tournament kind of out of the blue. And so if you lose to St. Peter's, especially after they've been run ragged at their conference tournament like that, major problem. Honestly, if you get played close by St. Peter's, there's a pretty big problem for me. That would be very, very bad.
This is like the one situation where you say, okay, maybe that Mississippi State loss was you still want to say a good thing, but the positive comes out of it. Like, okay, we're not taking anyone lightly at this point. We know what can happen here.
Yeah, you got to know what it means and have your head in the game. I think they'll steamroll St. Peter's ultimately, even if it starts out a little slow. Oh, look, Tennessee's only up by 2, 10 minutes in, blah, blah, blah. And then I think eventually they run away with it. Now, next, there's 3 options here: Virginia, Colorado State, or Texas. Personally, I will take the best coach out of that set of teams in Tony Bennett. He's won a national championship. I think Tennessee ends up playing Virginia in the second round. And everybody's been saying, oh, Texas. I'm way more concerned about a Virginia team.
Yeah, they'll ugly a game up in a minute.
Oh, God. I mean, they obviously, Tony Bennett coaches his teams to win like 57-55. And it just like Tennessee think back to that home game against South Carolina where they just muddied it up and it was just gross and overly physical. Like it's just not Tennessee's sweet spot. And obviously Tony Bennett's a great coach. Now Texas plays a little more of a similar game to Tennessee. I don't think that their coach is anything special. Obviously you beat them. That was a year ago. You beat them, but still you've seen this coach before. I'll put it this way. I hope Tennessee plays. I hope Tennessee plays Colorado State because I think Colorado State is the lesser of all those teams. But my guess is Virginia. Texas would. I think Tennessee has a better road if they play Texas. I don't know if you agree with that.
I mean, I know it's not fun for conversation, but over the last several years, we've seen Tennessee get the easy path, the desirable path, and do nothing with it. So at this point, I feel like you just kind of throw your hands in the air and it's like, whatever happens, you just have to go win. You have to go win. It doesn't matter if it's a good matchup or not. All these games are going to be intense. Everyone's there trying to make a run. You're getting everybody's best shot. I don't think there is anything to this easy path. I mean, if you want to get to a Final Four, you want to win a national championship, you've got to win some tough games. And if that means, you draw Virginia, then you're going to have to figure out how to win that ugly game. We've been saying, for months that it's going to take, this team has to be able to win games in multiple ways. And they did that at times during the season. We saw them win games when Dalton Connect, struggled a bit and other guys had to step up. We've seen them win, some uglier matchups. So if that's what happens with Virginia, then so be it. You just got to win. I mean, it's just like if you, you get to the Elite Eight and you face Purdue. I mean, that's a game that, hey, you want to win a national championship, you're going to have to beat a team like that. Probably a couple of teams like that.
You definitely are. Now, let's say you get past both of those, your options in the Sweet 16, South Carolina, Oregon, who just won the Pac-12 tournament, Creighton or Akron. Obviously, Creighton is probably the most likely there. They're the 3 seed. You've beaten South Carolina already. Oregon, a little bit more of a long shot, but could happen. They cleared through the Pac-12 tournament. Who knows? South Carolina, I would prefer that just because it's better the enemy that you know than the one you don't. And Creighton also has a really good big man in Ryan Kalkbrenner, who I don't suspect a lot of Tennessee fans have watched much Creighton basketball this season. I love Big East basketball. It's one of the great leagues.
Oh no, the minute that these brackets dropped, you said something about Creighton's big man. And I texted, I said, of course you know something about Creighton because
I've been watching them.
This is the first time I've thought about Creighton all year. I mean, obviously they're a team that's in the tournament from time to time, but
so it was 2 things. I really liked watching Rick Pitino's St. John's team. They're just like, it's kind of fascinating watching him still operate in college basketball.
Side note, he went off on a tangent.
Whew, I mean, and they, in my personal opinion, they got screwed out of a spot in the NCAA tournament. But regardless, they shouldn't have lost all those games that they did. So it's their own fault. But he's in my opinion, I mean, he's the greatest active coach still living, 2 national championships at 2 different schools, and a whole bunch of Final Fours, and we all know his history. And then he's there back in New York, he's still wearing a suit on the sideline, just looking like he's ordered a hit on somebody. Like I've watched them, and then I watched UConn a bunch this season because they're good. They were fun to watch this year. They got Cam Spencer, who's talking trash to everybody, and their
coach has some bravado about him.
He's the best young coach right now. I mean, ultimately in his career, maybe he ends up being the best active coach whenever Rick Pitino retires. But he's a pretty big douchebag. I'm not gonna lie.
He's easy to dislike.
Yes, Dan Hurley is not the most likable dude on planet Earth. But Creighton, because of that, I've watched Creighton a number of times, and I, outside of Kalkbrenner, I actually think it's a pretty decent matchup. They're more offensive heavy than defense. They're not going to drag the game down. It would be like playing Alabama if Alabama had a little bit better players. Ultimately, Alabama's roster is not that good this year. It just really isn't. It's Mark Sears and a bunch of role players. And Creighton's got a few more shooters and a little more better pieces to work with, and obviously a good big man. But I look, I will still say no excuse not making it past all of those teams. You're better than all of them. You're historically through this season, you are significantly better than pretty much everybody in that region. Now in the Elite 8, it could be real. I don't need to name off everybody. Let's be realistic here. Purdue, Utah State, TCU, Gonzaga. Although Gonzaga got to play McNeese State, who's coached by Will Wade, and McNeese State has won 30 games this season. Kansas, and then they play Sanford. But those would be your Elite 8. Obviously, everybody's going to assume it's going to be Purdue. But, of course, Purdue lost to a 16 seed last year, so we'll see.
I think the most Tennessee thing that can happen. I'll go ahead and tell you when I filled out one bracket. It's all I filled out so far is the A to Z Sports Bracket Challenge. I'm sure we'll throw some tweets out. There's some cool prizes that you can win, especially if you're local to Nashville. But I filled that bracket out a little while ago, and I just try to go with logic with these because I know there's going to be upsets, but it's so hard, right, to predict which 13 seed's going to win or which 14 seed or 15 seed just pulls off a miracle. It's just a guess, right? So I just try to go with logic and fill it out that way. So I have Tennessee going to the Elite 8 to play Purdue. I have Purdue moving on to the Final Four. I mean, you've lost to Purdue this season. Zach Edey, big man. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong, but you lost to Mississippi State and then you lost to them again. So it doesn't give me a lot of confidence that you're going to right your wrongs from that first matchup. I think it was a 4-point loss, so it was a close game. But I think the most Tennessee thing that can happen is you get to the Elite 8 and McNeese State has advanced also to the Elite 8. And it's McNeese State.
That's where I thought you were going.
Final Four. Yeah, I mean, that is right. Like, I could see that happening very easily. And that's when I said earlier that, Tennessee's had these easy paths before. It doesn't really mean a whole lot to me if those, present themselves. If that's what's in front of you, you still got to go beat a team that's playing really good ultimately.
That would be very fitting for how, get knocked
especially
out by
being Will Wade. Yeah.
Yeah. Will Wade, you've lost to Loyola Chicago, you lost to FAU with really good teams. Oh man. Yeah, that would be pretty fitting. I don't want to speak it into existence, but good Lord, that would just be, God has a real sense of humor if that happens. But some good points here in the comments. Jared says, Tennessee lost to Texas A&M badly, and then they won 7 straight. I think we can get to the finals. And then Ahmad says, this is good only because Texas under Rick Barnes was in a similar spot. They lost their first game in the conference tournament and ended up going to the Final Four that year.
It's only Final Four, right? Yeah.
Yep. And I genuinely would wonder if there is any kind of correlation between having a lot more rest, losing earlier in your conference tournament and success in the tournament, because
you need fresh
Tennessee,
legs.
yeah, Tennessee lost in the quarterfinal last year to Missouri, and had a lesser team last year, but lost to Missouri and then made it to the Sweet 16, beat Duke. And not, whatever happened against FAU, but you made it to the Sweet 16 by beating Duke, and I don't think anybody expected that.
I mean,
Maybe
just
there's a
bullied
correlation
Duke
there.
too.
Yeah, I really stuck it to them.
There's got to be. I mean, you look at a team at like NC State that just won 5 games in their conference tournament. I'm sure they're going to be a hot, trendy pick to reach like the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. But they were, I mean,
They
5
worn
games.
down.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Burns, as fun as he is to watch for NC State, soft touch, passing the ball. He's not the most in shape guy. That's a lot of minutes that he's logged over the past week. Is he going to be as effective, deep into March? Probably not. They're probably not going to go that far after winning the ACC tournament.
That really was wild because Tennessee played them earlier this season, kind of manhandled them. Really didn't struggle.
I don't think Burns had much of a game against Tennessee.
No.
And he dominated Baycott, Armando Baycott, against UNC.
Oh, he was just bullying him. They just kept giving him the ball just right there near the block, and he was just pushing him, backing him down. And it was kind of tough to watch on Armando Baycott's part. Like,
I mean, he was getting his leverage in and doing everything he could, and that dude just bullied him and then would finesse something, off the glass, some weird looking hook shot that just went in every single time.
Yeah.
It was wild.
When you're feeling it, you're feeling it. There was a lot of that in the SEC tournament too, like with Texas A&M against Texas A&M, where it was just like, when it's your night, it's your night. You just throwing stuff up, everything goes in. The Wade Taylor had like 80 points, and the other kid had 40. So that I think NC State has done. They've gotten theirs for this.
Yeah,
season,
they've matched out their. Good for them. Whatever.
And who knows? Maybe they will go on, but I think they lose in that first round of Texas Tech. But
so, what do you think happens in the Elite 8 here with Tennessee?
So I would choose Tennessee to go to the Elite 8. I would put it this way: they should go to the Elite 8. Again, you're better than all of those teams. It's not even close. Well, it's a little close with Creighton, but not. It's not close enough to where you shouldn't move on to the Elite 8. Look, Kansas is without Hunter Dickinson. And they have been playing like garbage coming down the stretch. But, Bill Self has that. I mean, multiple national championships. What are you going to do? He is what he is.
He's one of those guys like Tom Izzo. We were texting about yesterday. March comes. It doesn't matter what their record was during the regular season. You don't really want to play those guys in the tournament.
Yeah, I could see it being Kansas. And then I think that's actually, if Hunter Dickinson is still out, and I don't remember what injury he actually had. If he's like done, Bill Self. This was yesterday. Bill Self says Hunter Dickinson is doing great, but didn't provide a timetable. So
that's helpful.
If Dickinson doesn't play, I think it's honestly a good matchup for Tennessee. You've already seen them this season, and then you would be seeing them without the big man that would push around Jonas Adu. So, I don't know. I would say unless it's Purdue, you should move on. Gonzaga's good. I could see it being Gonzaga. Lord knows it's all about match. I could see it being McNeese State. God knows. Who really knows what's going to happen? But I'm going to choose Tennessee going to the Final Four because this, and you can call me delusional. Now or never. To me,
well, I mean, they have as good of a chance as anyone really in this tournament. Even UConn. I mean, UConn's not infallible. They could drop a game and not reach the Final Four. A lot of times, the overwhelming favorites don't make it. So it's not an absurd notion. It's not like Tennessee snuck into the tournament and you're picking them to get there.
No, definitely not. UConn didn't even have that great of a regular season last year. I was trying to see. They were 31-8 overall. Didn't win the Big East tournament, and ultimately won the national championship. So you have a better record than UConn had in the Big East last year, and they ended up winning the national championship. You never, ever know. Wild things happen. It's all about matchups, and we'll just have to see what happens. Thursday, like 9:30 p.m. is your first game.
Which will probably be later because you know how they run behind.
Yep. And so 10 o'clock against the Peacocks. We shall find out. Man. Anything else with basketball before we move on to the little short bit about the first day of spring practice?
No, I mean, I'm just it's the most fun time of the year. So hopefully Tennessee does not bow out the first weekend. That's worst case scenario. Obviously, you want to see them make this run and put a few games together, at least get to an elite eight. I feel like if you get to the Elite Eight, anything can happen at that point. Yeah, you know, if it's not Purdue, you should advance. Even if it is Purdue, it should be a close game, and you know, maybe whoever has the ball last type of game wins that matchup. But either way, you get that far, and I feel like okay, that point is just whoever has a good night, and you can't really predict that kind of thing.
As I said, I will be. If that happens, I will be in the fetal position on the floor, on the verge of tears the entire game, and then at the end, I will cry. Either happy, either way, either happy or sad. That will be the Elite Eight for me. All right, let's talk a little football right after I tell you about the good folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big thanks to them. Now, just briefly here, it was the first day of spring practice. We got to bring it up. It's the first day. There's not going to be that much to say, but you got to see some fun things like some new dudes, and you got to hear from Josh Heupel. And so I'll just throw it to you, Zach, from everything that you saw. Did anything stick out to you today?
I think the most encouraging thing, and like you said, it's the first day. There's not a lot going on at this point. We'll know more as spring practice progresses over the next couple of weeks before the spring game in middle of April. But seeing Nico out there definitely looks like he's added some muscle. He looks a lot different than he did as a true freshman, which is good because I mean it's the Nico show now moving forward. It's kind of weird to think about the fact that this is the first time. I know you had the Citrus Bowl, but even in the Citrus Bowl, it still felt like, okay, you've got Cooper Mays, you've got Jalen Wright out there, you've got some of these guys that are kind of the leaders of this team right now. Even with Joe Milton on the sideline, and again, Milton on the sideline, he's still a team leader at that point. It felt like Nico was just kind of getting his feet wet. It wasn't really his team yet. Now, I mean, it's on him. Joe Milton's not there. I mean, you are the guy. Jake Mertlinger is the primary backup with Gaston Moore. You've got to be the guy. You've got to be the guy that leads this offense, that holds guys accountable, and you've got to look the part too physically in the SEC. You just can't win games in the SEC if you don't look the part physically. It's a grown man's league. We all know that. So it was very nice to see that Nico's put on some weight, put on some muscle mass. We know he's going to run the ball a decent amount. He's going to have to be able to take some hits, because even though quarterbacks are, more protected now than they were back in Casey Clausen's day and Peyton Manning's day and all that, they're still going to try to lower the shoulder and lay some hits on him and make him think twice about scrambling out of the pocket and trying to pick up those yards. So I think that was the best takeaway to see from today, really.
It's such an exciting opportunity for him, and really seeing the culmination of all the stuff that we've been anticipating since he committed, because it's before he committed, and he'll always have a special connection to this show because he committed in the middle of one of our live streams. And God bless him for that. I know he did it on purpose. We coordinated that with him. But from then, obviously, we all watched him really closely, and he's just shown that he's got just something special in terms of just his charisma and his just the way that he handles himself is just beyond his years. And then, of course, finally, we got to watch him play in that game against Iowa, and it's one snippet in a bowl game and kind of a weird spot where teams don't always play their hardest and stuff like that. But not to take anything away from it at all, but he goes out and he scores 4 touchdowns, and you just see this kid, and everybody now is looking like this could really be the guy that finally is the special dude we've been waiting on. And the opportunity there is absolutely incredible, and I hope so badly that he embraces it fully, because God knows that if you embrace it, Tennessee will embrace you back for sure. I'm sure he already gets that. There's no doubt about it. He's got the NIL deals where he's selling.
He got it as a recruit when they're chanting his name and his recruiting visit.
Exactly. It seems like he really gets it. And yeah, he did look a little bulkier, and man, it just it makes me smile a little bit just thinking like, the potential there is the ceiling's high.
It's it's far too early to think about what the 2024 season will be, right? I mean, we still got to get through March Madness. We got Tennessee baseball, even though they dropped the series to Alabama, they're playing pretty well. It's a long way away, but I do think there's a lot of sleeping on this team. I think last year it felt like everybody was trying to hype the team up. Even some of the players. I mean, they made it. They're like, we want to get to Atlanta. We want to win a conference championship, and good. That should always be the mentality. I mean, opposing Georgia fans are going to laugh and say, well, you're not going to do that with Joe Milton. And they didn't, but that's still got to be the goal, going into a season. This year, you don't really hear a lot of that talk. It seems like a quiet confidence. Like they think they're going to be good. The national media is kind of like, yeah, they're probably not going to make the playoff. We're going to slide Ole Miss in there. Maybe Missouri makes it as a sleeper. Probably not going to be Tennessee type deal. They're not really giving the wide receivers a lot of credit. And I look at this wide receiver group especially after today, seeing like Chris Brazzell out there, and this might be the deepest wide receiver group in the nation. I mean, who's going to start for this team? Brazzell is there, Dante Thornton, who it's easy to sleep on him because he was just getting going when he got moved to the outside last season before he sprained his ankle in the Missouri game when he caught the only touchdown of that game. Squirrel White's going to, do what he does, who quietly had 800 receiving yards last year as a sophomore. Brew McCoy back, Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod. If Nathan Leacock can turn into what we think he could be, it's a deep group, a really deep group, a lot of playmakers there. And now you've got the quarterback that can get them the ball. You've got the first quarterback that Josh Heupel has kind of handpicked from high school to be his guy. They're in tune with each other. They speak each other's language. This is the offense that, you're going to see what Josh Heupel wants to do offensively the most that we've ever seen it this season, during the Nico era, even more than what Hendon Hooker did, because this is just the skill set that Heupel wanted. So, these receivers, this offense, it can be really, really good as long as everybody stays healthy, especially up front with the offensive line. You still don't have a lot of depth there. I think that's probably the one concern, and the biggest thing that you've got to get out of this spring practice is you've got to develop some offensive linemen. For God's sakes, you've got to develop a backup center, because, if Cooper Mays sprains an ankle and he's, tries to play through it, or he has to come out for a half, whatever the case may be. Hopefully it's nothing long term. Hopefully nothing happens and he plays every snap except in a blowout. You've got to have a guy there, unlike last year when it was just trying to figure out what would work, and it kind of bogged the offense down when we're playing with a quarterback that wasn't Hendon Hooker, that's not Nico. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to look for in the spring.
Depth across the lines and in the defensive backfield. That's major question marks there, but it's kind of a, we'll cross that bridge when we get there a little closer to the season. But
yeah, there's a lot of change, and there could still be players they add too. They added some players last year after spring practice that ended up playing a key. I think Keenan Peely maybe was after spring practice last year. And Norman Lott, I think, might have been
Yes.
after spring practice last year. So you still have the opportunity to add to your roster after spring practice, because we'll see a whole new, depth chart start shaking out. Guys aren't happy. They move on. There will be some opportunities to add to the roster, here going into the end of April.
For sure. And I mean, my bottom line with that Nico talk is just with an elite quarterback, anything is possible.
Oh, yeah.
Just look historically in college football, when you have that element, the rest of the team doesn't even necessarily have to be elite.
Auburn can attest.
Exactly.
2013 Florida State, though they had a pretty good defense. They had Jalen Ramsey and some
did.
guys, but Jameis Winston's the reason that team won a national championship.
Yeah. Anything is possible when you got a guy who can carry you to wins like that. And I'm not saying surefire that Nico is that dude, but I would say he looks like he could be. So, yeah, we'll see. But Josh Heupel also talked. Did anything stick out to you in his press conference, Zach?
Pretty much no, because that's kind of the way he pulls it off by design. He doesn't really. He says a lot of words without saying a whole lot. I did like the one thing that he was asked about the transfers and some of these players, if they feel a sense of urgency to produce right away because you've brought them in as a transfer, you're expected to kind of plug a hole and produce right away. And his answer was like, hey, everybody better feel that way. If you're an elite competitor, no matter if you're a 15-year veteran or you're a true freshman, you better feel some urgency to get on the field and to improve every single day. Otherwise, you're not going to make it, in the SEC or in the NFL, wherever you want to go, if you don't have that mentality. So it is kind of always like, even though you're a true freshman or you're a transfer that's come in, you're new to the program, it's go time no matter who you are. It's go time if you're Brew McCoy coming back from injury. If you're, Cooper Mays entering your last year, you've got to have that sense of urgency no matter what. So hopefully that's a message that's kind of percolating through the program and everybody is kind of listening to and taking in, because that's the type of mindset you have to win a championship. And it starts now. It starts in January. It starts right after the bowl game. It starts when Dylan Sampson kind of stepped into that leadership role and was like, he's going to be the guy. He challenged his teammates immediately, after the Citrus Bowl, to get going on the 2024 season. It's not taking a break. We're not resting and we'll get there when we get there. So I feel like this team has a solid mindset from the head coach to the team leaders. What's that translate to on the field? We'll see. You got to go out there and execute. Like I said, it's a long way away, but I like the vibe around the team. It feels like a quiet confidence, and it feels like 2022, they didn't have a lot of expectations on them going into that season. It kind of feels like last year reset those expectations, and they're flying under the radar a little bit again. And it's kind of when these Heupel teams are at their best, it seems like.
I don't mind it. Come out with a chip on your shoulder. That's a great sentiment to have. Urgency is key in everything when it comes to sports. So hopefully they can do that. Not Jared asks, do you think that Nico will be better than Hooker?
You got to hope he is.
Ultimately, I would say he better be. Like, in no way am I putting down Hendon Hooker at all. I just think the ceiling for Nico is that high. The ceiling for him is the best quarterback in America, I think.
It should be. He was rated on 3, had him as the number 1 player in the recruiting class, and the other places that didn't just had Arch Manning over him because his name was Arch Manning, and kind of by default. I mean, that's his ceiling. His ceiling is Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall draft pick.
Yes,
that's the thing.
He is that level of talent overall, and I think anybody that's watched him coming up, I've said this for a long time, really since he showed up. If you talk to anybody that's watched him at length, like behind closed doors, they all say like, this dude's different. Like he's got something. So I would say maybe not this coming year, but by the end of his career at Tennessee, I certainly hope so.
By the end of his career might be next year if it all goes to plan.
Yeah, it should be.
It'll be next year, and then maybe Mertlinger starts a year, and then you got George McIntyre, and it's a nice little pipeline that, like, it's a lot. You got to have the results on the field. Everything has to go to plan, but the way it lines up for Heupel, I mean, it's like a quarterback factory right now. So
he will have a dude for a minute here, a good minute.
And if Nico goes early, if Nico blows up and has this tremendous year this year and is really good in 2025 and is a first round draft pick, and he's in that conversation that you hear with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May right now about the draft, like who's going to be the number 1 pick or who's going to be in the top 5, it's only going to make that even more intense. It's going to, guys are going to seek out Tennessee no matter where they're from. And we're already seeing that to some extent.
Yeah, he'll be a legit draw for Tennessee, especially out of transfer portal. I think if he ends up having a really great year this year, but ripped the headphone out of my ear. That was really cool. I think that's pretty much it. I'll plug right here at the end just because this was a really fun thing. I did a show with the great Ryan Nanny from previously SB Nation. I'm not sure exactly what Ryan is doing at the moment, but he does a podcast called "We're Not All Like This."
It's a celebrity hot tub on Twitter, right? If you're not familiar with his name,
yeah. And he's big Twitter account. He's just kind of like a funny college football personality. But he does a show called We're Not All Like This, and they feature a different fan base in every episode, just Auburn, Ole Miss. They've done, let's see, Connecticut, Washington State, Louisville, and they just talk to 3 fans from every fan base, and just get like your take on the insanity of cheering for your given team. I did it for Tennessee. It came out today. It's great. You should definitely go listen to it. I suggest it highly. We're Not All Like This. Just go look it up on where fine podcasts are sold. But I will ask you, I just loved this, and I wanted to ask you, Zach. This is one of the last couple of questions he asked me in that interview that Ryan asked me. He asked first, internally at Tennessee, out of the last 15 years or the modern-ish era here that's been a little rocky, internally, who is the one person or people that you hate the most, that you dislike the most from Tennessee? And then also externally, who is it that you dislike the most? It's a really interesting question.
I think, internally, I feel like it's pretty easy. It has to be Butch Jones, right? I mean, it has to be
one of the guys on the episode said that.
It has to be just his personality. And it's not just because he lost at Tennessee and got fired. Like I don't have this gross disdain for Derek Dooley. He wasn't a great head coach. It didn't work out. He shouldn't have ever even been the head coach at Tennessee, right? Like it was just the Kiffin disaster, passing on like Cutcliffe and stuff. I mean, it should have never been Derek Dooley. He was not ready for that job. I don't just have this crazy dislike for him. And the same goes for Jeremy Pruitt. I don't have this gross dislike for Jeremy Pruitt either. Like he wasn't a good head coach. Again, Tennessee should have never been in the position they were in after that disastrous coaching search. And at the time, Pruitt looked like the best option. It was him, Mel Tucker, Kevin Steele. None of them would have been good options in retrospect. They were all disasters. But Butch, the personality, and look, he had the most success of any of those guys. He had a couple of good moments. The Hail Mary at Georgia, actually finally beating Florida, even though he blew a couple of games that he should have won against Florida, blew the Oklahoma game, and so on. Is his personality, and to this day, I watch his press conferences. Just people complain when the articles go up, but they read it. They want to know what he's doing. It's like a car accident type deal. Like you can't look away. And he's so just self-obsessed and insecure. It's just one of those people that does not make you feel good. Like he doesn't feel genuine, nothing about it. It takes a lot for me to actually kind of dislike a person. I feel like I can find common ground with most anybody, but that's the one guy that's like, I just don't want anything to do with you. I don't want to hang out with you. So that would definitely be my answer for the internal one.
Yeah, he's genuinely a bad person. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like that guy," but it's just business. It's not. It's personal.
Yeah,
but he's a bad person.
And externally, I think that's at first when you mentioned you were going to ask me this, I I wasn't sure where I was going to go, and it kind of popped in my head immediately. It's Kirk Herbstreit for me personally.
Yeah.
Because there's just that guy again. I feel like he's very pretentious. You know, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room type of guy. He lashes out at people all the time if he doesn't agree with them. He tries to big time people. I've seen him in the press box at Neyland before. He's just kind of got this air about him that's just not inviting at all. And I've seen some, some big names have come through there at Neyland Stadium that we've seen. Guys like Brent Musburger. You've been there with Vern Lundquist, and they seem like warm, inviting people. And Herbstreit's just not that. And there's a lot of options there, media types, but I think Herbstreit just kind of the way that when he lied about the locker room stuff with Tennessee, like I feel like he went on ESPN and he picked Tennessee to lose to Vanderbilt, which I don't really care about who you pick to win or lose a game. It's whatever, it doesn't really matter. When you're like, oh, things aren't good in Knoxville, and you're just going off some message board rumors that nobody really knows what's going on, and you pissed off the head coach who I think replied to him about 3 different times after they beat Vanderbilt. That kind of stuff is what gets on my nerves. Why be that way? Why do that kind of stuff? And he does it a lot. He kind of always subtly pushes his Ohio State stuff. He always kind of wants to act like he's better than everybody, or that he's the gatekeeper of college football. And he wants to be that. I mean, he's kind of open about it. And he ends up, if you just go look at all the stuff he's had to apologize for at this point, it's a pretty long list of things. So that would definitely be my answer for the external one.
Great answer. I won't say what I said on the episode so that people go listen to it again. We're not all like this, Ryan Nanny, on wherever you get your podcasts. But I will say one answer to the external question that I thought about immediately after it was over, and I went, frick, I should have said that. For the external person that I hate the most, it's the national media. And I mean, that's like for Tennessee fans in general, it's who we battle with close to the most out of anybody. I mean, there's opposing fan bases, and some stuff like that. But Wolken, 40,
Dodd, and Dennis Dodd.
Wetzel.
There's and
Herbstreit.
I feel like Herbstreit is kind of separate from them because Herbstreit doesn't really do what they do. It's kind of a separate deal. But Ford and Walton specifically feels like they're, if you're calling us like pro Tennessee, which obviously we are, if we're kind of looking at things orange tinted, which obviously, I mean, it's the bubble that we live in to some extent. They're the antithesis, exact opposite of that. Like they are not, they're going overboard to try to, slant everything kind of anti-Tennessee or to make Tennessee look bad or to like this NCAA stuff. And I don't feel like they give it an objective look at all.
Never.
And we don't claim necessarily to be this purely objective type of people. That's not what we really do in with what we do. But they don't either. At least not when it comes to Tennessee, even though they claim to.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. I never claim to be unbiased. I mean, I am literally wearing a Tennessee coat right now on this show. But they just have a legit axe to grind with Tennessee. They're the absolute worst. Can't stand any of them. And I wish I would have said that, but I didn't. So go listen to that show. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Thanks so much to everybody for watching. As always, great comments tonight from everybody. Y'all were great. We truly appreciate it. Could not do it without you. I know I say it every week, but I genuinely mean it. Seriously, you're the reason this show goes. So thank you. Yeah, that's all for tonight. We will talk to you all. Yeah, we probably won't do a midweek because I was thinking, maybe after Tennessee's first game, but no, never, because it's going to be on Thursday and we're not going to do a show on Friday. So never mind. So we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.